is your Frontier Opening Bell, everyone. Welcome to the show. I am Hussein Amafai, and this is your fourth trading day of the week. But just step back into Wednesday, which is midweek, and check through some of the African markets we covered. The South African stock market jumped roughly 2%, a very big take to 73,000 reading for the most advanced stock markets on the African continent. Of course, you know that Egypt has got a very big news yesterday. The raising of interest rates by 6% to 27.25%. The currency was devalued around 26%, and the stock market took a beating, 3.02%. Today is the final trading day of the week in Cairo. Let's see how the market will wake up today in the morning after. In Nigeria, the stock market continued to eke out some gains since Monday, with the listing of Transport Power still retaining its most actively traded stocks by currency value, 11.5 billion naira on Wednesday, also taking the share price higher to around 317 by another 9.9%. The parent company, Transcorp Group, continued to ride on the back of that subsidiary, with Transcorp Power accounting for 15% of Nigeria's total energy production of about 4,000 megawatts. Big story, but the NGX still below the 100,000 index reading. Look into the BRVM in Cote d'Ivoire, the composite index down by 0.61% on Wednesday, despite gains by the Bank of Africa. Then you've got the Nairobi stock market up roughly 1%, taking the All-Share index higher at 94.20. The Zimbabwe stock market, of course, finished yesterday down by 2.05%, and we saw some blip also on the Ghana's composite index as well. And that's just roughly a summary of your Wednesday trading day across Frontier African markets, Sub-Saharan Africa, to put it that way. Let's get on to checking with the East African headlines. Of course, we've got a couple of rate decisions. It was an unexpected, unscheduled monetary policy meeting, the session yesterday in Egypt. The same thing happened in Uganda, where the central bank raised the country's lending rate from 9.5% to 10%. That's about 0.5% upside as the country looks to tame inflation and ensure that and consumer prices remain not so highly elevated, and try to moderate things, as it were. In the meantime, Uganda's development bank says it's disbursed about 610 billion shillings in key sectors of the economy. In Kenya, the central bank says it's licensed 19 more digital credit lenders, bringing the total of such operators in the East African biggest economy to 51. And still in Kenya, Safaricom M-Pesa is now 17 years old today, and we say congratulations to this iconic financial inclusion brand. A technology-based M-Pesa was launched 17 years ago and is done roughly $1 billion since it was created. And earnings coming out of Nairobi Securities Exchange shows Stanbic Kenya of Kenya reporting net earnings of about 34.19%, very big jump. Final dividend to shareholders is about 12 shillings 20. And that's some earnings there. We have a whole lot more from banks and others reporting on the Nairobi bourse. Then you had the DR Congo says it's got EFDB's $117 million to modernize the country's agriculture. The authorities in DRC are spending more and expanding the country's budget to accommodate more agriculture. So from mining deep resources now into agriculture, one of the vast and yet to be cultivated land on the African continent, after countries such as Nigeria and others. Let's get on to a check with West Africa. And of course, we have yields up just around 18, 19, and 27% on 91, 185, 364-day short-dated papers, midweek auction of government papers that the central bank conducted yesterday. The regulator took about 1.3 trillion naira from about 1.75 trillion total subscriptions. Nigeria's FX spot market reportedly did about $4 billion in transactions in the month of January. And Fitch Ratings says central bank's rate hike 2 weeks ago to a new high of with about 300 basis points, or their tightening is a welcome development. It's in a good direction to fix the country's flagging economy and the challenges. Still on interest rates, the BCEAO, which is the West Africa's central bank, holds a key lending rate at 3.5%, while Ghana bondholders are asking the Ghanaian authorities to sweeten the deal for $13 billion, restructuring a little bit further. How much they're asking for? Let's see how that pays out. Let's get on to Southern and Africa. And through us on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange announced overnight that is applied for voluntary trading suspension because it's got some regulatory matters to attend to. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange says that voluntary suspension request is now being looked into and will let everyone, the markets, entire market know when True Earth shares will be available once again for trading on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Of course, True Earth is headquartered in South Africa, by the way, and it's also listed on the GSE. South Africa reporting business confidence deep into 30 points in the first quarter. That's no good news. Cape Town and the OR Tambo, Oliver Tambo's airport's expansions has now been approved to go ahead. That's some good news for Ramaphosa's administration facing a major general elections at the end of May. Back in Zimbabwe, the Minister of Finance, Mtule Ncube, says $18 billion debt talks for the country is remain on course despite the United States exiting itself from that debt restructuring talks based on what we saw 2 days ago with the removal of sanctions by Joe Biden's administration on Zimbabwe, but placing President Ramaphosa and some government officials are still under sanctions. So that's the latest as we speak. Is optimism there from the Minister of Finance. And the World Bank says 44% of Malawian kwacha devaluation objective is yet to be met. The World Bank wants Malawi to further devalue its currency and says what's been done so far it's not fully in compliance. The market wants to see a whole lot more. So you look at North Africa with yesterday's devaluation of the Egyptian pound by 26 basis points. The Egyptian pound took a beating to about 50 against the US dollar, while the stock market dipped about 3%. The market is looking at what is the way forward. But we saw about 2 cents upside to Egyptian's bond yesterday. How much of that will help the country to unlock? So we got news later in the day that the deal with the IMF from around $3 billion has been scaled up to $8 billion with some financing help coming through from the UAE, United Arab Emirates. So that's the big story as we go into the final trading day in Cairo. Tunisia reporting inflation declined to 7.5% from 7.8% in January. And finally, Libya says its FX deficit in the first 2 months of this year is around $7 billion. And those are your headlines this Thursday, the 7th of March. I am Bosin Namafaya. Thanks for watching. I'll see you very soon.